KBTV in Denver. This is 9 News. Number 1 in Colorado.
Good evening. John Elway is apparently coming to the Denver Broncos. We'll get to that in about 15 seconds. A major
Newsroom, I guess, is probably the reaction to everyone who's heard this bulletin up till now, and that is it really so? Is it really going to happen?
Well, after they revived me and I was able to check it out, it is true. John Elway, indeed, is coming here to Denver. I still can't believe it. It's hard to figure. Had been rumors circulating all day that the Broncos were trying to trade with the Baltimore Colts. Apparently, they have pulled it off. The Broncos have pulled a major trade. They have called a news conference for about 30 minutes from now, at which time we'll get the official announcement. And Tom Green right now is standing by at Bronco headquarters with our live action cam. And Tom, what do you find out, buddy?
I'll tell you one thing, Mike. If they didn't get John Elway, they sure woke up a lot of people for no apparent reason, because a lot of the media has immediately gathered here anticipating the deal for John Elway. The names being bandied about, number 1 draft choice Chris Hinton, along with Mark Herman and Bob Swenson, all being mentioned in a possible trade. We'll find out in about 27 minutes when the Broncos hold a news conference, apparently announcing that they have acquired the rights to John Elway. Live with the action cam at Bronco headquarters, Tom Green for 9 News.
Okay, thanks very much, Tom. And we will be going back to Tom Green when that news conference began. He mentioned Bob Swenson. The reports we had, Mike, were that they would get Mark Herman with the top 2 draft choices, Chris Hinton, along with Mark Cooper, and also a first-round pick in 1984. But the Swenson thing is interesting. I find it hard to believe they'd trade Swenson, but we'll find out.
What about the baseball? I mean, he was talking about doing baseball
I think that was the court of last resort, and it got done exactly what he wanted to get done, and that's traded and be able to play in the NFL.
All right, good enough. Ted?
Florence, do you really need that piece of candy?
No, but that's the beauty of candy.
Kaiser, the owner of the team.
Mike, Edgar Kaiser talking right now, confirming that John Elway is indeed a Denver Broncos since they've signed him. I'll let you take it from there.
Baltimore's number 1 draft choice. We give up next year's number 1 to Baltimore and Mark Herman in the trade. Those are the terms. Maybe you'd like to talk to John Elway. John?
John Elway now, you just heard it. Chris.
Well,
Chris Hinton is gone.
Tell you what, I'm definitely thrilled to be here. It's something that I didn't expect to happen. I'm glad that I get to play in the NFL, and I'm glad I get to play for the Denver Broncos. Like I said, my life hasn't been too straight lately, and not one thing has happened that I expected to happen. And it's truly a great thrill for me to be here. I'm going to go out and give 100%, and hopefully everything will turn out.
John, you had said you wanted to play for a West Coast team. It's a long way from the West Coast.
Well, not really. From the beginning, Denver was always on our list. It was always a team that I wanted to play for. You know, and that it was just so happened that we were able to make a deal with the Broncos, and I'm glad to be here.
John, when did you make that deal with the Broncos? When did everything come together? It seems like it was very whirlwind.
It just started today. I found out, I woke up this morning, and it started about 11 o'clock this morning as far as I knew. And everything's been about 200 miles an hour since.
Have you had any discussions with George Steinbrenner?
No, I haven't. I haven't had a chance to talk to Mr. Steinbrenner, but my attorney, Marvin Demhoff, has already talked with him.
You have indeed signed with the Broncos? Is that correct?
Yes, I've already signed.
John Elway. How seriously were you really considering baseball?
I was playing baseball. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind I was playing baseball. I wanted to play football, but the things hadn't worked out, and I figured that baseball was my best option. Having the choice, baseball was my best option the way it was going. And when I was able to sign with the Broncos, to me, that was the best thing that was offered to me, and so I did.
What was different between Denver and Baltimore that made you want to play here and not play in Baltimore?
Well, there's not a lot of things. As far as Baltimore thing, I consider that thing kind of dead. That's in the past. I'd like to discuss the future and with being with the Denver Broncos, and so.
Has it been indicated to you that you're likely to start this coming season, or is that not?
Mike, this is, of course, Gary Cruz again out here at the Broncos headquarters. John Elway has indeed become a Denver Bronco. He has signed his contract. He has signed, we don't know all the intricacies about this contract, but we do know that Chris Hinton was traded, and number 1 next year, and Mark Herman, quarterback Mark Herman. So John Elway, this is hard to believe, very stunning development, but John Elway is now a Denver Bronco, and I'm going to throw it back to you.
Cruiser, Spencer, there were some indications that perhaps Bob Swenson was involved. Anything on that?
No, not at all. Like I said, Chris Hinton, the #1 draft choice, and Mark Herman, and a #1 choice next year. It appears that this is a steal. I'll be very honest with you. It appears that on the surface that they got a steal.
But, you know, this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I think John has greatness in front of him, and, you know, I think I'm certainly looking forward to it. And, you know, we'd kind of gotten Dan Radakovich where he had 2 #1 picks, you know, and John Haley was a new coach. We had to give him something. So it's a good deal, and I'm just tickled to death. We're glad to have John, and I want to thank Mr. Kaiser for the work that he did, too. So I think it goes to show that we're sincere about building a football team here, and not for next year or the year after. We're talking about long term. So I'm just tickled to death to be a part of it.
Heard it from Dan Reeves there, and hold on just a second. We're going to get some of the situation intricacies of this deal.
Cash involved or anything else, right?
Deal like Mr. Kaiser told you.
Has this deal been in the works since draft day? Have you been working on this since then?
Well, we had talked about it, you know, on draft day, the possibility because during the draft, we had talked to Baltimore about the possibility of if they got certain draft choices, they'd switch with this. And we knew that they were interested in, you know, our #1 pick. So that just kind of started, and you know, I can't really answer all those questions other than the fact that I had discussed it with Hein and with Edgar, and we had talked about it and what our options were and so forth. And, you know, he's been working on a deal, you know, since then, so he'd have to be the one to answer all those questions.
Do you expect John to come in and start?
About picking Hinton, was that a factor?
No, I had no idea at the time we made the draft that, as I said, that was the furthest thing from my mind. I had no idea that we'd make a deal with for John Elway, and when I picked Chris Hinton in the first round, it was because I thought he was the best football player available at that time.
Mike, I'm going to send it back to you because you got some big nugget news.
Gary?
Yes.
You might ask him a bit later on. The NFL today filed suit, Al Davis did, against the NFL, saying that the league tampered with them in their efforts to try and get John Elway. You might eventually want to ask him that.
We'll follow that up, sir.
See if that's going to cause problems.
I think a trade is good for both football teams. And they were happy with what they got, and we're happy with what we got.
How much negotiating went on in the trade itself?
Again, that's something you'll have to talk to Edgar about. Okay, he dealt directly with Mr. Irsay, and you'll have to talk to him.
Dan, when did you first learn that you'd be able to sign it?
Well, this has been, you know, continuing from the day I talked to Edgar early this morning, and Hein, we were on the phone, and, you know, I knew it was pretty close in because they were talking serious. So it's been serious all day. So it was, I think it's a great deal. I'm glad to see, first of all, John Elway stay in the National Football League. And if he's going to be in the National Football League, I thank goodness he's with us. So I'm glad he's here.
What do you expect his role to be initially? You think this young man can come in and start for you?
Well, I think I answered that question. Where were you, Gary? No. As I said, I don't want to put undue pressure on John. I think he has the capability of doing it. Steve DeBerg has a starting job. It's going to be John's job to come in here and prove that he deserves a start. If he does, then he'll start. If not, Steve will be our quarterback, and we'll bring John along. But I don't think there's any doubt that we would not have made the deal if we didn't think that he had the capabilities of coming in here and challenging.
Your mind elsewhere at the Nuggets game tonight, then?
I kept looking at my clock. But I'm glad they won. Congratulations, too, to the Nuggets.
Dan, when did you find out for sure the deal was done?
But for sure, I don't know, about 30 minutes ago, for sure, that everything was finalized and everything was settled.
What time was the contract signed?
Oh, I don't know. Which contract? You only signed about 100. So. But just recently. Why don't everybody come down? I know you don't want to ask me all these questions, John. And
how long is the contract? How many years?
5 years.
How much?
About the same as your salary.
Are you saying a 5-year contract or 1-year contract? Is it a series of 5 1 years? Or?
Series of 5 or
Yeah.
1 5-year contract?
Series of ones.
Series of 1, totaling 5.
It's sort of like Doug's. It's hard to win 4 in a row, but it's easy to win 1 in a row 4 times. Right?
John, what were the factors in your decision, other than the fact that you wanted to play football? What were the things in Denver that attracted you?
Oh, we got to move up.
I just think that when we went through the teams that I would like to play for, that I felt the option was good for me in the National Football League, and I picked Denver. I think that they're always respected. I think that I've always looked at Denver as a good football team. In some place that with guys in our team from Colorado, knowing that they really enjoyed it there, and not knowing too much about it, but what my attorneys had to say about the people here at Denver and the class organization that they are, that put them on the top of the list.
Dan, was this pretty much the same deal? Your first shot to Baltimore before the draft?
We never really made a shot before the draft.
Who initiated the latest move here?
Well, it hasn't been a one-day negotiation, and I guess the right way to say it is that I had a chance to talk to Bob Irsay, and we were able to successfully conclude a negotiation.
Mr. Kaiser, Al Davis said that Pete Rozelle and the NFL blocked his deal to get John. Is there anything to that?
Well, if they did, I'm grateful. And but in our negotiations, I didn't find that to be true.
The rumor mill had some other names involved, Bob Swenson, Dennis Smith. Was this the original offer? What did the Colts originally want?
Well, I think it's been publicized that they had a fairly broad shopping list, and we were able to successfully negotiate the contract that we did, and we are delighted with it. And we're obviously sorry to lose Chris and sorry to lose Mark, but as Dan said, every trade is a trade. You get something, and you have to give something.
John, were you ever serious about the USFL?
No, I wasn't. We had an offer from early back in February or January, but it was either I was going to play in the NFL or going to play baseball. I wasn't planning on playing the USFL at all.
Dan, everybody has talked about what they perceive as the young man's abilities. What is your assessment of this?
Of course, I touched on it, I think, briefly before the draft. I think John has a unique ability. First of all, he has a tremendous arm that God blessed him with. And he does a great job. I think one of the things I was most impressed with, he does a good job of, first of all, finding an open receiver. But once he does, that he can have tight coverage. He has a unique ability to put the ball in a place where the receiver has a chance and the defender has very little chance. He also has the ability that I've only seen in one quarterback that I've worked with, and that's Roger Staubach, that he can win a ball game, strictly with his arm. Not that he doesn't need a good supporting cast around him. All quarterbacks need that. But in a crucial situation, if you have to throw the football, the defense knows you got to throw the football. John has the ability to put the ball in there between defenders. He has that great arm that you need to do that. And I'd say that's probably the most impressive thing. I think another thing is he handles himself extremely well. He's got that charisma about him, that attitude about him, that, that he has great talent, and, he can prove it.
John, would you agree with that?
I'm the player. I don't think I go out and do the best I can.
What was the reaction of friends and family?
No one knew. They probably don't know yet. This was something we had to keep quiet, I guess. And so.
What time did you leave California?
3:30.
That's when the rest was happening.
Did you come in with Edgar?
Yeah. Well, I was in San Francisco, then we flew up to Seattle and picked Mr. Kaiser up, then flew out here.
You and Mr. Demhoff?
No, Mr. Demhoff flew out straight from LA. He was here about an hour earlier.
When did you first 2 weeks been live with Irsay?
Pardon?
I'm sorry. When did you first make contact with Irsay?
Well, we first started talking directly with him about a week ago.
Right after the draft?
Not exactly after.
Exactly right.
John, the last 2 weeks for you, Was it unnerving? How did you deal with it?
Well, I was, it was kind of the day of the draft was kind of a low for me because it was something that I hadn't expected. And I think the next day was a little bit, but I think after that it was something that I adjusted to, and I knew that the best thing was going to happen. I just had, was hoping that somebody could make a deal within the next 2 weeks, within 2 weeks, because after that 2 weeks time up, I was going to go and play baseball. And I'd like to thank the Broncos for coming through for me, because it's something that I'd really like to do, and looking forward to it.
John, how close was the deal with Oakland or L.A.?
I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know as much as my attorneys know. I just kind of knew the outskirts. I guess something fell through or something like that, but that was nothing that I had a part of.
What did you do today?
I sat by the phone. They said, okay, there'll be a guy at 3 or 3:30. I said, all right, be ready to go. And they just, from then on, I've been just...
He decided that he liked takeoffs better than landings.
John, because of all the media publicity around your situation, both before the draft, the day of the draft, and since then, do you anticipate any animosity on the part of other players in the league?
Well, I hope not. Yeah, I guess if I look at it realistically, there might be a little bit. They might say that I'm a spoiled brat or something like that, but that's something that I hope doesn't go too far, and can understand where I was coming from.
Dan Reeves talked a little earlier about your abilities. How would you assess your abilities?
Well, that's always the thing that I hate doing the most, is evaluate myself. I can do it to myself and leave the evaluating up to everybody else. But I would say that my strongest asset is my arm. I've been blessed there, and I've been fortunate because I've been in a football family, and I've had a great mom and dad who I've always been around football, and so I've been kind of had a head start as far as football goes with a lot of other players, and I was blessed because I threw the football. We threw the football 400 times a game, or 400 times a season in high school, and which is a lot. And had I got an early eye-opening to throwing the football, and that gave me a lot going into college, and then I had a great football coach there too. So I was just fortunate to be in a situation that I have been in, and I think that's really helped me come along. And I'd like to say that I go out and have a good time. I'm glad that I can move. I like to get out and run around. I'd rather run than have a guy hit me standing there. And so I think that would probably be one of my assets too. But I'm, like I said, go out and try to do the best I can.
John, is baseball something you'd like to try someday still?
Not anymore. I mean, I'm just, like I said, I'm glad to be in the NFL.
Don't ask a question like that.
John, did it come down to either baseball or Denver? Was Denver your last shot? No.
Well, it was going to be within the next week. We were planning on today. We were going to set a meeting with the Yankees for next week, and then if nothing happened within that week, that I was going to sign with the Yankees. But it's thank God that Broncos came through, and I, not taking away anything from the Yankees. They've been great to me for that year, the year and a half that I've been acquainted with them. I really enjoyed my summer last year, and they've been nothing but great to me. And I don't say thank God that I'm not with the Yankees. It's just that my preference was to play football, and I'm grateful that I ended up here.
Dan, at the end of the season, you said that you were not interested in drafting a quarterback. Shortly after that, you said you were interested in John Elway. Was there something specific? Did you see a film? Or
yeah, that's exactly right.
Is that what happened when you...
We came in for a preliminary meeting with the scouts. And when we came in, we already have tentative the grades that the scouts set on them. And everybody had John, the scouts that had seen him had him, rated really high. So I said, well, maybe I better look at some film. So I looked at some film, and I agree that if you are going to take a quarterback, that he's an unusual talent, and that, as I told you guys in the press, unless I could take, John, which I knew would have to be the first pick, now I wasn't willing to take another quarterback in the first, because I'd like to bring quarterbacks along slowly, and as I said earlier, I don't want to put undue pressure on John, but he does have a unique ability to throw the football. that very few people have.
Was there a specific game or play that you saw that just...
Well, it was just kind of every game I looked at. He was impressive. And I could see why the scouts, felt like, because he has a tremendous arm. And throws the ball with great accuracy. And, he doesn't, as he said, he doesn't have the greatest receivers in the world to throw to. Not that they're bad, but they're not very big. And so I figured if he could hit those guys, we need to get some bigger guys in here that he ought to throw the ball really well. But he has great talent.
Obviously, the lack of experience, but you mentioned the strength. What is the weakness?
Well, of course, I think that's it, is experience. You don't face the type of coverages that he's going to face in the National Football League while you're in college. But because he has thrown the ball so much, as he said, since high school and since college, he's a lot further along than most quarterbacks are. A lot further along. The same was true of Mark. Mark Herman was brought up in a passing game, and he developed faster than most quarterbacks do. And I think because of that, John, will come around and be ready to compete, a lot quicker than, quarterbacks normally do.
Dan, where do you see John as a quarterback coming out of college compared to, say, some other quarterbacks that you've seen down the road?
Well, he's the best that I've seen, since I've been in coaching, which is 1970, that I've watched an awful lot of film, on college quarterbacks. But I think that you could better judge John, because if you go back to 70, there were an awful lot of teams that really weren't throwing the ball a lot. When you look at John, you get a good feeling for him throwing the football because they throw it so many times. So you get to see him do an awful lot of good things, and get a better feel for him than you do a lot of the quarterbacks that I've seen since 1970.
Dan, how radically does this change your expectations for next year? I know you've only had a few minutes to think.
Well, I still think when you look at the quarterbacks who've been successful, they haven't done it by themselves. They've had a good supporting cast. Joe Theismann is a great example. Joe has played in the league for a long time. All of a sudden, he's finally surrounded by good people, and he goes to the Super Bowl. Roger Staubach, was a better quarterback. Danny White, because they have good people around them. So John is going to be a better quarterback, as the supporting cast around him gets better. So I'm not going to put tremendous pressure on John. As I said earlier, I just don't feel like it that I need to do that. He's going to have enough pressure to live up to being the first person picked in the draft and all of the things that he's said about him and talked about him. But I do feel like he can come in and compete. And, the same as he says he'll give 100%, that's all that I expect our football team and our coaching staff to do. And, just give the best they can. Things will take care of themselves.
John, why were you willing to play baseball on the East Coast, but you wouldn't play football there? I mean, New York's just as far from California as Baltimore is.
Well, the question about the weather's been brought up a lot. I mean, I would have. It's not as big a deal as it came out to be. I mean, a lot of people thought that the only reason I wouldn't play in Baltimore is because it snows in the wintertime, which is not true. If another team went back there would have drafted me, I might have thought about it, but I didn't want to. Didn't want to play for the Colts, and that's in the past. And
John, did Frank Kush have anything to do with that? Is it that you did not want to play for him?
I don't know Frank Kush well enough to say that I wouldn't play for him. So
you're saying that wasn't a factor, or was it considered?
No, it wasn't a factor.
Edgar, despite all of it looked like there was no deal possible. What made you think that you could make a deal during this time?
I'm not sure if we looked at it quite that way, but I had a chance to talk with John and his father, and we were talking with the Colts, as I've said, and it just looked like we might be able to put it together, and fortunately we did. And we've got, we have such great fans here, and I'm just delighted we were able to do it.
John, Coach Reeves just mentioned or talked about the pressure that you are automatically under, regardless of the football situation here. How do you plan to deal with that, or do you feel that you are indeed under that type of situation?
Well, I've not really time to think about it too much yet. I mean, I've only been a player. I've only been in the NFL for about a half hour, so it really hasn't sunk in yet. The way I've always done it, and probably the way I'm going to try to stick to doing it, is, try to let that just go in one ear and right out the other, and realize what I have to do. I think that I play my best football is when I'm out there having fun and relaxed and not living up to anybody's expectations, but you know, but what I can do and my expectations of myself. And that's another problem that I've got to make sure I don't do, is put too much pressure on myself and just go out and enjoy the game of football like I do and have fun.
John, the fact that you've actually put Denver back on the map, that's got to be something in your mind for the NFL. I mean, that's an incredible thing.
It's kind of hard. It's still hard for me to think in that, with that, you know, the way. Pardon?
You're that big.
Well, well, thank you. I'd rather keep it, you know. Sure. I'm still a college student.
Edgar, is the rumor true that it's now Kaiser Elway Steel?
You forgot the aluminum.
Gentlemen, it's really late, and we know virtually everybody here wants to do one-on-one interviews. So we'd like to cut off the question and answer period right now. And maybe John would be willing to pose for a few pictures in a Bronco cap, which he'll have to adjust, and a football, which he won't.
Can I grab you? We're live on Channel 4. With me right now, Ron, is Dan Reeves. Dan, when did you first realize that you were going to have John Elway?
Well, I knew it was a good possibility early this morning when I talked to Edgar. He had been talking to Mr. Irsay and felt like it was a deal that would be close. But, you know, it was all contingent upon, you know, us making a deal. We had talked to Marvin Demoff. We talked to John. We talked to his dad, Mr. Elway. And so I knew we were awful close, you know, making a deal. But I wanted to wait until I was sure that everything was finalized. And, you know, and there's just no way to keep things like that a secret. And unfortunately, it broke on the news, and I had to tell Mark Herman, you know, that it was a possibility. And that's the worst thing about it. When you start dealing with young people's lives, that's the tough part of this business. But I just feel like John Elway has greatness, and we're glad to have him. I don't say that this makes us a contender, but I think it makes us a football team that can build around John. And, you know, for a long time. I think we're going to be a good football team for a long time now. And I think that Mark Herman had that possibility to bring us in. But I don't think Mark had the arm that John Elway has, but he does a lot of things awful well.
You know, everywhere that Elway has been, grade school, high school, college, he has always thrown the ball 40 times a game. Will he throw the ball that many times as a Bronco?
You know, I've had Roger Staubach that I've coached. I've had Danny White I've coached. Craig Morton that I've coached. And, you know, I think that they would tell you that they'd rather be balanced, where they don't have to throw the ball under constant pressure. I don't think you go out in a football game in the National Football League and say, hey, we're going to come at you and throw 40 times, unless you are a San Diego that has, you know, 4 or 5 receivers that can have that tremendous ability to get open against all defenses. We're going to stay balanced. I think we got a good offensive line that can move some people out. We can run the ball, take a little bit of pressure off of whether it's Steve or whether it's John, you know, and be balanced. I think that's the type of teams that win championships. I don't think it's a football team that goes out and says we're going to throw it 40 or 50 times a game. When you look at the Redskins last year, they really won it because they could run the football and control the football. So we're going to be balanced, but we're going to do whatever it takes for us to win. If John, we feel like, can take us with the passing alone, and we'll probably pass the ball more often. But, you know, we'd like to stay as balanced as we possibly can.
Draft day, you were reluctant to make a big package deal for Elway, maybe saying that one player is not worth that many people. Do you feel you got a good deal getting rid of Hinton, Herman, and next year's #1?
Well, first of all, as I said, I would not make a deal for John Elway if I thought it really hurt our football team. I feel like it was a good deal for us, or I wouldn't have, you know, agreed to make the deal. But, you know, with that, we also lost, you know, Mark Herman and our #1 next year. And I look at it as that's what we gave up, because had we picked first, we would have taken, you know, John Elway instead of Chris Hinton. And so really we're looking at, you know, giving up Mark Herman and a #1 next year. And I think that's a good deal for us. But, you know, apparently Baltimore feels like it's a good deal for them. So that's what deals are all about. It's 2 football teams getting together, and no one feels like they have an advantage over the other.
How did Hinton take the news? Was he surprised?
Well, I didn't get to talk to Chris. Now, Hine talked to his attorney, Dick Lynn, and, you know, they were upset because we had brought Chris in here. You know, and we really had no idea at that particular time that there was any chance of making a deal. I did know that if we did make a deal with Baltimore that he was going to be included, because he was a player that they talked about you know, switching positions to get if they got San Diego's choice right behind them. So I knew that they were interested in the same player that we were, and after our first conversation with them, they said they would not talk about a deal unless Chris Hinton was involved. But, you know, you didn't want to say something to Chris about that. I really felt like that Chris would be here, and there would be very little chance of us making a deal with John Elway. But things changed, and, you know, Edgar did a great job of negotiating and getting John Elway here. And, hey, like I said, I'm just glad to be a part of it.
Did you go to Edgar and say, I want Elway? I mean, I want the guy.
No, I really didn't. We talked about it before the draft. You know, was it possible? And we pursued it. But when we found out what all the numbers were being thrown around and what they were asking for, you know, we all agreed. Edgar and Hine and I, we said there's no way that we're going to do that, you know, for John Elway. Well, then when the deal did not go through and Baltimore picked John in the first round, we felt like that, you know, John was sincere because we had talked to him, his dad, we talked to his attorney, that he was definitely not going to play in Baltimore. And I don't think that's bad. I think people are looking at it making a lot out of John Elway from the standpoint that, you know, he's spoiled and so forth. But John has options that nobody else had. He could play baseball, and he could play baseball for 2 years and then go anywhere he wanted to. So, you know, I think he was trying to say to Baltimore, I don't want to go there. I'd like to go somewhere else. I really think that, you know, that us making a deal has really helped the National Football League because we kept a great player in our league that we could not afford, you know, to lose. We've already lost Herschel Walker. I don't think our league could afford to lose to John Elway.
All right. Thank you, Dan.
Okay,
Reeves.
thank you.
Appreciate it. All right. We are at Bronco headquarters, needless to say, and we're going to move right into the melee here. Excuse me, Irv Brown. I'm going to scoot right around you. We're going to move in on Edgar Kaiser, if we can. Let me move this a little bit. You know, this is the first quarterback that the Broncos have had that, if you will, has not been on the downside of his career. You think of Frank Tripucka, you think of some of the other people that they have had over the years, Charlie Johnson, and also Craig Morton, even perhaps towards the end of his career here, even with the big years that he had. But this is the first young quarterback that the Broncos have had.
Well, you know, the first time I talked to Bob was on draft day. Yeah.
When did you first realize that you were going to be able to make a deal with Elway?
Well, I thought on draft day that we had a chance if we could just keep it non-public, and that we found the Colts very straightforward to negotiate with, and I'd gotten along well with John and his father, and I thought we could do it.
Did you go to Colt owner Robert Irsay, or did he come to you and say, hey, let's see if we can cut some kind of a deal?
I called him.
You called him. Mm-hmm. Let me ask you about the contract itself. It is a 5-year deal. Is it a 5-year package or a series of one 5-year deal of one year?
It's a series of 1-year contracts for a total of 5 years.
Did you feel any pressure? You have come under some fire from local media, from some fans perhaps, as not signing the kind of players and individuals that maybe some of the Bronco fans have wanted. Did you feel a responsibility towards the fans maybe to make that kind of a deal?
Well, we felt the responsibility, as I said earlier, to build a consistently winning football team. That was our objective. That's what we started out to do 3 years ago, and I hope this is a step in doing just that. We all think it is, and we're delighted to have John here, and looking forward to practice beginning.
When you first told Dan that you were going to make a deal like that, what was his reaction?
Well, as you could see this evening, he's rather pleased.
Okay, Edgar Kaiser, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We are going to throw it back to the studio right now and try and grab John Elway for a conversation. Here is John Elway, is now a member of the Denver Broncos in a trade tonight. He is here, and he is now
Jeff,
Denver Bronco. Yeah, Ron.
Jeff, can I ask you one thing? I just want to make sure of the deal. As I understand it, it is Mark Herman, Chris Hinton, the Broncos' #1 draft pick, and next year's #1 to Baltimore for Elway.
That is correct. That is the deal that the Broncos made.
Okay.
Okay. Let me see if I can grab Elway, and I'm going to throw it back to you.
Okay, good enough. So the deal is Chris Hinton, Mark Herman, and a #1 for John Elway, the man who was thought to be the best quarterback to come out of the collegiate draft since at least Joe Namath back in the mid-'60s. Summing up some of the other things that happened at this news conference, the contract was not signed until about 10 o'clock this evening, Mountain Standard Time. Elway and Kaiser flew in from the Northwest, and the contracts were signed at 10 o'clock. Dan Reeves says Elway will have to win the job away from Steve DeBerg, but Reeves has told me on a number of different occasions that if he could get John Elway, there was no doubt in his mind that he would be a starter right away for the Denver Broncos. It is a 5-year contract, a series of 1 5-year contract. So John Elway is a member of the Denver Broncos. The dream is now a reality. We will take a break and come back and wrap it up when News Center 4 continues. This is a News Center 4 special report, the trading of John Elway. In case you have just tuned in, the Broncos tonight made a trade with the Baltimore Colts. They have acquired quarterback John Elway. The Broncos have sent to Baltimore backup quarterback Mark Herman, offensive lineman Chris Hinton, who was the Broncos' #1 draft pick 1 week ago. Hinton was the 4th player picked on the entire draft and next year's #1 draft pick. So Herman, Hinton, and a #1 to Baltimore for John Elway. Elway, in case you do not follow football that closely, has been a starter at Stanford. Stanford has never had a bowl team since Elway has been with Stanford, but he is, by all scouts, he is the best quarterback to come out of the draft in some 10 to 15 years. He has a rifle-like arm, he has poise, he has great precision, and they say that John Elway is a can't-miss, a man that is a franchise maker for 10 to 15 years. At the news conference, which just concluded, the Broncos announced they had signed Elway to a 5-year contract. The deal was signed at about 10 o'clock. Edgar Kaiser, who swung the deal with Robert Irsay, the owner of the Colts, said that he started talking to the Colts before the draft. When he was asked if he started to talk to the Colts after the draft, Kaiser said no, before the draft. So basically, this has been more than a week brewing, the trade of Elway. It finally broke this afternoon. It was leaked to the news media. Dan Reeves then said he had to contact Mark Herman and Chris Hinton, and the deal was made. So John Elway, tonight a member of the Denver Broncos. Of course, last year, Craig Morton started for the Broncos, and he retired. Steve DeBerg had the job at the end of the year, but obviously now it will be a battle between John Elway and Steve DeBerg. For more, let's go back now to the Bronco complex with Jeff Hullinger and John Elway. Jeff?
Okay, Ron, I am here with the newest Denver Bronco. How does it feel to know that you're going to play football as opposed to baseball?
I'm really excited. I think that coming down to it, football was my first choice, and I'm really glad it turned out. I'm thrilled to be here in Denver, and you know, I was overly pleased to hear about it. I was not sure about it for since about a half hour ago, so it's a relief, and I'm really happy to be here.
What do you know about Denver? As you've seen the Broncos on TV and you've seen them over the years, what has been your initial impression of this club as you know right now?
Well, I've always kind of looked at the Denver Broncos. I know that I've looked at them as a good football team and a team that can beat anybody on a certain Sunday. I know that we had a couple guys on our team that lived in Denver, and they really liked it here. And I've heard nothing but good things about Coach Reeves, and I'm really looking forward to playing for him and playing with all the other guys here.
You mentioned Coach Reeves. Now, every place you've ever been, you've thrown the football 40 times a game, high school, college. Has Dan Reeves made any promises to you that you're going to put the ball up that much?
Oh, you know, if we throw it 10 times and goes 18-0, I'll say that's great. I want to do what it takes to win. If it's 20 times a game, or if it's 10 times one game, or it's 50 times another game, whatever it takes, I want to do it.
Your first reaction when you were told by your attorneys that you would become a Denver Bronco?
Well, like I said, I was really relieved. I said I didn't know it was going to come true until about a half hour ago. We've had a lot of things go up and down, and I just didn't want to get too overly excited if it had fallen through. And so now that it's done, I think it's going to take a while for it to sink in, but I'm really, really thrilled about it.
What do you think is going to be the biggest adjustment from playing major college football to playing in the NFL?
Well, I think that you're just stepping up. It's like coming from high school to college, and now it's just another big step. And I'm a rookie now. I don't have any experience, whereas last year I was a 3-year or 4-year vet, you know, in high school or college, and now I'm a rookie, and it's a whole different league, and you're a professional now, and you got to go out, and it's a job, and you got to do the best you can, and you're playing for money now.
Did you have any conversation with Robert Irsay at all during all of this? Did they try and say, John, we want to work out a deal to make you a Baltimore Colt. We're willing to do anything it takes to make you a Colt. Was there any discussion like that at any point?
No, we said that before the draft that you know, it wasn't a money matter. It was just my choice that I'd rather play somewhere else, and that it wasn't nothing against the city of Baltimore or you, but I would rather, you know, I had another option. If it was football with the Colts or you know, baseball with the Yankees, I would pick the baseball.
Ron, I'm going to give you to John. You got anything you want to ask him?
Yeah, John, this is Ron Zappolo back at Channel 4. First off, congratulations. Welcome to Denver. Let me ask you, I know probably one of the reasons you didn't want to play with the Colts was because they are a poor football team. The Broncos have been a tough team for years, but they're coming off a poor season at 2-7. Might you feel just as much pressure as a Bronco that you might have as a Colt?
No, not at all, because I think that last year there's a lot of teams that were good football teams and didn't have good years. I think the strike affected a lot of people, with the Broncos being one of those teams. But I don't feel any pressure. I've kind of lived by the motto that I'm going to go out and do the best I can and do what it takes to win.
How much do you know about Steve DeBerg?
I don't know a lot. I know that he's a super person. I've met him a couple times, and my dad's got a great deal of respect for him, but that's all I really know about him.
Are you expecting to come in here and by September be the starting quarterback at the regular season?
Well, no. I'm gonna give it 100%. I don't know exactly what's gonna happen. I don't want anything given to me. If you know, it's Steve's job right now, and I'm just gonna come in and do the best I can. And if that gets me the starting job, that's great. If it doesn't, then I'll keep working until hopefully someday it will.
Don't you feel though that Dan Reeves probably expects you to come to the front in training camp and probably win the job?
Well, I don't know. I'm sure that in the next couple of days I'm going to get to talk to Coach Reeves and see what he feels about it all and how he feels, what my role will be, and that type of thing. So I'll know with the next couple of days what he's going to expect of me.
John, it's a pleasure to have you here. You've made hundreds of thousands of people in Denver very happy, and I hope it's a very long and very pleasurable stay for you.
Well, thank you. It's great to be here.
Okay. John Elway and Jeff Hullinger. Jeff, any final comments? What can you just tell me, what is the mood out there at the Broncos? It must be somewhat shock and great pleasure.
Well, I think everybody is obviously shocked with the move, and it's also surprise because, you know, there's been the discussion of over the years the Broncos have never had a young quarterback. They have never had anybody who, say, could play in this league for 13 or 15 years and have a tremendous career here. There has always been the various quarterbacks that have come in over the years, the Trapukas, you think of Charlie Johnson, Steve Tensi, all of those fellows who were towards the decline of their career. They were older, more mature quarterbacks, yes, but obviously the future was not one of their greatest benefits as to what would happen for their careers here in Denver. And it is a feeling here of great anticipation and great excitement. The guy is being called a franchise, and you take a look at the statistics and some of the things that he has done in his career everywhere he has been, you have to think only good things for the Broncos. And if the Broncos got him for Hinton and got him for Herman, and next year's #1, you got to think that it's a steal.
Thanks for going over. Very good job. I know you caught the Nugget game, so it was a big night on two fronts. And we'll see you, and I'm sure you'll have a report tomorrow on News Center 4.
Yeah, thanks, Ron.
Okay, Jeff Hullinger reporting live from the Bronco headquarters. So once again, let's wrap it up for you on what this day, May 2nd, 1983, means for the Denver Broncos. They have acquired the quarterback who many people feel is the greatest quarterback to come out of college football in the last 15 years. #7, John Elway out of Stanford. Edgar Kaiser worked a deal with Robert Irsay, the owner of the Baltimore Colts. In exchange for the rights to John Elway, who the Broncos have already signed, the Broncos trade backup quarterback Mark Herman, who was drafted 2 years ago in the 4th round, offensive lineman Chris Hinton, this year's #1 pick, the 4th pick of the entire draft, and the Broncos' #1 draft pick next year in 1983. So it took a week's worth of effort, and Edgar Kaiser tonight, the owner of the Broncos, may have answered some of the questions about does he indeed want to own the Broncos for good and make the franchise something to be proud of. There had been talk the past year that the franchise was up for sale. There had been talk that Kaiser owned it as a lark. Obviously, that is not true. He has spent millions of dollars to sign John Elway. So that is the story for tonight. All of you in Denver who are Bronco fans, there are months ahead of great excitement and great optimism. John Elway tonight is a member of the Denver Broncos. This has been a News Center 4 special report. I'm Ron Zappolo. Good night. California, and he has more tonight on John Elway's Stanford years.
In his 4 years at Stanford, John Elway broke just about every Pac-10 passing mark and most of the NCAA records. Better than a 60% completion percentage, nearly 10,000 yards gained, and 77 touchdowns. Still, the Cardinals did no better than 6-5.
as an individual, I couldn't ask for any more, but I definitely give some of those up for a couple more wins.
Here at Stanford, they called him instant offense. In Denver, they're calling him instant franchise. But no matter what you call quarterback John Elway, he's got the right stuff. 49ers head coach Bill Walsh says he's probably the best quarterback I've ever seen. Former USC head coach John Robinson, I think John Elway's one of the all-time greats. And Bob Logan from the Chicago Tribune writes, if the Gipper were a quarterback, he'd have to change his name to John Elway. Pretty impressive words, but that was in his college career. He still must prove himself in the NFL. Some people don't think he'll have any problem.
John Elway can step in and start. They talk about the complexities that go with the Dan Reeves offense. He's used to complexities. He is prepared at this point to go out and play.
He'll make a lot of other guys look good. He'll carry the weight and make some other people look good. It's very difficult to tackle him in the pocket, which will help the offensive lineman. And if a receiver isn't completely open, he's got the resources and his arm strength to put the ball right in a small hole.
John spent last week working out, getting ready for the opening of rookie camp tomorrow. What does he think about his chances of starting next season?
It's not a big thing for me to start the first, start right away. If that happens, that's super, but I'm going to go out and do the best I can, and if that leads to a starting job, then that's great. But if it doesn't, I'm going to keep working hard, and, hopefully eventually it will.
Until he takes the field as a Denver Bronco, we won't know. But if he has half the career he had in college, Edgar Kaiser may be nominated for sainthood. From Palo Alto, California, Steve Alvarez, News Center 4 Sports.
We haven't applied too much pressure on John Elway the last 10 days.